Welcome to Fans of the Forge. I'm Chris. To my left, we have...
We got Sean.
And to my right, we have...
Teresa.
And today, our episode is a special interview with Josh Weston. Josh, you're on now.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited about this.
Well, thank you for coming on. You know, we've been hearing from a number of Forge and Fire contestants and champions over the last month or so. And you were one of the first ones to contact us, actually, after we talked to Drew. And Drew put in a good word for you. And we had seen you, I think, the most recently on Knife or Death.
Yep.
And we're still playing catch-up on some of the older episodes. But we've seen your episodes of Forge and Fire as well. And we've been following you on Instagram for a while now. So we got a number of things to talk about, I think, here.
Yeah, we got a good list here.
So Josh, if people don't know, was on Forge and Fire twice, and the second one was when you were brought back as a fan favorite.
Yeah.
And in that episode, you ended up beating Ray Kirk, who was a very well-known fan favorite as well.
Yeah,
and
a master bladesmith, which is awesome. That felt really good, I'll be honest with you. Is it bad to feel so good about that?
No. And then more recently, again, you competed on Knife or Death. And from what I understand, you were the first contestants. Oh, there you go, yeah. Knife or Death, right on the show. You were the first contestant in the whole show to finish the course without incurring any penalties, I believe. So that is awesome. That is really an achievement.
Some background on that. I think I'm actually the only one. The only one
out of all of them.
I was the 37th person to run the course. I think those guys that aired in episode 5, they filmed second. And I think they just went through and destroyed that course. And I think they rewrote some rules after that crew went through with Wayne Mulligan and then with the hog splitter. Yeah, I think some rules were rewritten after that one. So that was a pretty crazy group right there. I have to be honest with you, but that's a wild experience, especially post Forged in Fire, going into Knife or Death. I mean, that's kind of a cutter's dream because you go in there. I went on Forged in Fire once. I lost right in the very end. Went back on, won. And then I want to go test my shit on something that awesome.
Right.
So for me, moving on to that show was great because it's like a 120-yard course of final testing from Forged in Fire that I get to run through with a knife that I made. I get to handle it. I get to make it move the way I wanted. And as you can see, I did a perfect job.
Right.
So
that's right.
I'm really happy with my performance on that episode. Oh, I love it. I want to go back on there and rip some shit up.
Nice. Well, season 2 is getting into production now, I believe. So
yeah, I don't know anything about that.
So how about we do this? We'll go chronologically here. We'll go back to your first appearance on Forge and Fire. We have a couple episodes to ask you about that.
Sure.
Or questions to ask you about that, excuse me. And then we'll move on to your second episode. And I don't know if we have a whole lot more to say about your Knife or Death thing, but we can get into it as we go.
Yeah.
And then we have some generic questions also that we can ask, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right.
I think you need to ask that first question.
I came up with this question, right out of the gate. I wanted to know, what did you think of Richie's steampunk goggles?
Oh, okay. This is going to go public, so sorry, Richie. I like Richie a lot, but I knew. So I was in the hotel first time I saw him. I walked around the corner, and I see this guy in steampunk goggles chatting up this girl in the lobby. And I went, okay, that guy's he's the other one. I saw Jason Reddick in the airport, across the airport. You can't miss that guy, right?
Oh.
And I looked across the airport, and honestly, I said to myself, that guy's going to be on the show, and I bet it's me and him in the finale. In the airport.
Wow.
Really?
In the air before yep. And sure enough, he he was on. We went back to the hotel. The next morning I came down for breakfast or whatever, and I heard Richie talking, went around the corner, saw him chatting up a girl with those glasses on, and I go, well, there's character number 3. I didn't think Kelly, I just wasn't there yet mentally, but then she ended up being number 4, got in the van. Great. It's a really great crew, really, really nice. Richie's actually a talented chef.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. You know, you don't find out as much about the people who go off first. But yeah, he's a very talented chef, which is a pretty interesting fact about him. I don't know that I'd pick the steampunk goggles, but he goes to those shows and he walks that life. I mean, you know, that's his thing.
Oh, okay. Then.
It's a lot of people's thing.
It's a lot of people's thing. Look, I make wrist cuffs.
Nice.
That's my thing. It's a little bit steampunk or Viking punk. A lot of people call me a mall ninja. Fuck you people. It's a Viking punk. It's a Viking ninja or a mall ninja. Mall. I've been drinking. It's
all right.
Viking.
You're Viking.
There you go. So, Jason, the guy who you end up facing in the final part of that episode, was it scary just standing next to him?
Dude, he's huge. I mean, I'm going to do this, right? That's his head. I'm down here. So the first time, for instance, I went to Blade Show after that episode aired, and I met a bunch of the other guys, and when they met me, they went, wow, you're actually normal size. We thought you were a midget. If you were a midget, or if he was a giant. And it turns out he's just a giant.
Yeah.
Huge. We've actually become really good friends. Jason Reddick and I are really great friends. His mom and sister live about 10 minutes from where I live, so he comes and visits quite a lot, and he works out of my forge several times a year for a week or 2 at a time.
Oh, that's
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool. After that episode, I actually had to, swallow a humility pill because it made it look like I couldn't sharpen a knife at all. So what I did is I actually invited him to my forge, and I had made some videos and some posts about it, and he gave me sharpening lessons.
Oh.
So, yeah, which is nice. And I actually did learn stuff because you can always improve your sharpening game. That's something I've learned is it doesn't matter where you're at in knife making. There's something you can improve on. You think you've mastered this skill? No, you haven't. You probably are okay at it, and now it's time to take it to the next level. I'm just hoping that by the time I retire, I'm actually a decent knife maker. That's my goal.
Wow.
Yeah, that's noble.
That's I don't know what's the word I'm thinking of. Yeah, I guess noble.
Noble.
That's the word.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It's hard. I look around at people who make knives and make beautiful, amazing things, and there are some amazing makers out there that just shit blows my mind, and I love it. I love that there's so much out there. I like that what the show does, what these shows have been doing, and they're not just on this channel, but they're bringing people out of the ground. They're bringing this craft and this trade and artisan and craftsmanship out and about, and we're creating makers, we're getting people involved. And the more people who get involved and invested and make things, the more we uncover that's been lost from the historical methods. And that is really exciting. It's very exciting to me to be alive at this time because something great is happening right now in the blacksmithing, bladesmithing community. And we are peeling back thousands of layers of dust on practices and things that have happened, and we're creating new and beautiful and exciting weapons again. And it's this community of makers that are sharing things with each other, and they're not being selfish, and we're not viewing each other as competition as much as we are camaraderie and friendship. And that is one of the things that Forged in Fire has helped accentuating. And I love that. Forever will love that about the show and my experience on the show. And yeah, and I see Knife or Death, which is kind of, there's mix. People who like Forged in Fire don't generally like Knife or Death. It's people who like knives that don't really watch Forged in Fire that like Knife or Death. I think it's a beautiful time to be a knife maker and be alive and witnessing and watching this. And I also think that Knife or Death is cool, and here's why. It's a proving grounds for the knives that we make. We don't fight in battles with knives and swords anymore. We aren't fighting to death with these things. Now, bladesmiths of old, they had that, right? So they would go, hey, this is what I want this weapon to do. Hey, I'm going up against armor now. Here's how I need to tackle this. This is a situation I run into in a fight that I need solved in a weapon. So then the bladesmith goes in there, oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to make this a little bit like this. We're going to change the point. We're going to, change the thickness, put a fuller in, change the way the guard interacts. Knife or Death is that for us now because we have this course that provides these challenges, and we go, I'm going to make a knife that gets through all that shit. What am I going to do that is going to beat everybody else that can handle well? And now we've got these makers that are starting to think about that. And it's our modern proving grounds. It's our modern battlegrounds, Yeah. And I think that's great. As a knife maker, I'm excited about Knife or Death. It's people out there cutting. I know, I'm sorry, I'm shamelessly plugging the show. I may not ever be on it again. I want people to give it a second chance, Don't shoot it down just because you're used to the Forged in Fire format.
Well, that kind of gives me a new view on it because we'll be honest, we've all kind of thought the show was a little cheesy, right?
Oh, I love that, though.
Yeah.
I watched all of them.
Teresa watched all of them. I watched all of them with her.
Didn't.
I did. I fell asleep on a few, but I watched them with her. And then after the first few episodes, I think I caught all of them with you. But when we first watched it, the whole thing with Bill Goldberg was a little over the top. But I hadn't thought about it the way you're saying it. So the way you're saying that now you have to, these guys are coming in and really thinking about how can I get through this course. There's a lot more that goes into the background, at least for the guys that are making their own knives.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in season 2, that's from what I've heard, it's going to be makers only. And that was supposed to be for the pilot season. But, a pilot season, it's so tricky because you've just got to make something that works and tells a story. And I really believe they were focused. Each episode had a very specific storyline that they were trying to get out. And none of us knew what the course was going to look like. We were told non-destructive targets. I'm sorry, but a sheet of steel is a destructive target.
Yes.
So... come on, producers.
Even like a block of ice,
Right. Yeah. That was my first time cutting a block of ice, by the way. And it really shocked me. I couldn't believe it. I took that initial hack in, and it was a really surprise because it just ejected my blade as if it was a bouncy ball on a cement wall. It was a really weird feeling that I just hadn't felt with a knife before. And if you watch me, after that first shot, I actually stutter. I freeze for a little bit, about a second or so, before I take that second and third whack into that piece because I'm just going, wow, that didn't cut at all like I expected. Very, very, very odd. Huh. I like it. It's pushing me. It's pushing me as a maker.
Right.
I'm going to drink more.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about it. Go for it.
Going back to the kukri episode, you had some trouble with the burn-through handle. Do you have lots of experience with that? Is that a thing that you do? Is that something you've done before?
Yeah, up to that point, I had only done burn-through handles.
Oh, okay.
That was it. Okay. I hardly ever do them anymore now. I hate them. I'll do burn-through antler now, but I don't like doing the burn-through wood. That was a really dense wood. Actually, I'm not even sure what it was, but it was dense and stabilized. It's really hard to burn through. If you're using a stabilized wood, it's resin. It doesn't burn the same way, and some of those thick woods, they don't burn through like a regular maple or something like that isn't totally treated. So, that was really frustrating. I was really, really frustrated because at that point I was doing a really good job. I was ahead of schedule or right on track of where I wanted to be. And that handle just completely got me out of my element, and I got that tunnel vision on that handle problem, and I stayed on it way too long, and that short sheeted me for my final sharpening time. And I remember being right down to the very last minute. I was grinding on the pommel of that once I finally got that antler piece on, and it was red fucking hot.
Wow. On
a grinder, and then quenched it. Walked over to the table, sat it down, done. That was it. I walked, and Jay Nielsen was so pissed. He was yelling at me later. And I've become good friends with him. I like Jay a lot. I have a lot of respect for him. I walked by a grinder that had a 400 grit belt on it, and he goes, "Why didn't you stop? Just stop, run it 2 times on it, and come in." But I've been cutting myself all over with that blade the whole time I was working on it, because I did a pre-sharpen. When I ground my blade, I put a bit of an edge on it.
Okay.
And then I just moved on, and I didn't go back to it because I ended up taking 2 hours on a simple hand, what should have been a really simple handle. So mistakes, I actually ended up putting Drew. I don't know if he told you this, but I put Drew through a boot camp before he went on.
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He came out to my shop. He goes, "I'm going to be on Forged in Fire." And I said, "Come to my shop." And we worked on knife designs and patterns and walked through what his schedule's going to be, what he's going to make, how he's going to make it. And I go, there's no doubt about it. If you want to win this, you have to cut corners, and you are going to have to figure out which corners you're going to have to cut. So we practiced knife design. I made him memorize the measurements for his blade, so that when he got to the 10-minute drawing window, all he had to do was take that ruler and plot them out. Because you get through that 10 minutes, that sets the tone for everything. Everything, that first little bit. If you can get yourself comfortable, you're going to be good. You get yourself confident and you get yourself centered, you're going to be fine in that competition. But if you're out there and you want to go on Forged in Fire and you aren't practicing that challenge and you aren't pushing yourself, you aren't going to win. The second time when I went on, Jason Reddick came to my forge for 2 weeks. Every day when I came home from work, he had a new challenge sitting on my anvil for me. I started the 3-hour timer, and I practiced that. He'd have, here's an axle chunk, here's a chain, here's a whatever. And I did 5 challenges over 12 days. And one of them was a complete mess up. The blade cracked in the quench. It was a cold day, and I didn't heat the oil. How we doing today? So yeah, I didn't heat up the oil. It was 52-100. I probably worked it in and out of ball bearings. But the thing is, I practiced every day for 12 out of 14 days leading up to me actually going on that. And what happened? I won.
Yeah.
Because I practiced.
Right.
I practiced everything. I get people who talk to me, "Oh, I want to go on." And the first thing I ask them, "Well, can you forge weld? Do you make Damascus?" "No, I don't do that." Don't go on the show.
Yeah.
Don't. That's step number 1. You won't make it through round 1. Don't go and look a fool. Go out there and be amazing. That's when you go on. Wait. If you've been forging for 3 or 4 or 5 years, 6 years, and you haven't done all the things that they do on there, or even a decent amount of them, please don't go on the show. But if you're a capable smith and you can forge a knife easily in an hour, and you can do Damascus, go on the show and rock out.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, we're off of the round one. I move around a little bit.
Oh,
we can go
fine. That's it's a conversation. So that's what we like. And this, what you said right there, it was almost like we just had the polar opposite interview with Colin Sage, who was he talked about how he hadn't practiced for 8 months before he showed up at the show, and then he realized what kind of shit he was in.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's what he ended up realizing. Oh my God, wow.
Yeah. But it does make sense to put in that effort, to put in that work.
Yeah,
makes sense to do that leading up to it, and it probably gets you amped up ahead of time, right? So you're doing these challenges, right? And so when you show up, maybe the adrenaline rush that you get isn't hitting you with the nervous energy as much.
Yes. Yeah, it's the creative. You'll have that problem-solving hat on already because you've been problem-solving in your shop.
Right.
Yeah. And for those who are master smiths out there, we've seen a lot of master smiths go on and not make it or look like they don't do quite well. The hard part is they're used to doing things at a quality standard. And in this show, it's not so much about that. It's about who can create that task in a quick way. You know, you've got to get a blade that's functional for the tests. You got to focus on that first. And if you spend too much time on the details, you're going to have a bit more difficulty finishing those 3-hour challenges on set to even get to the final round. You know, once you get to the final round, 5 days, fine, whatever, do whatever you want in that time period. But on set, you got to know what you're cutting and what you're not cutting.
Right.
That's personal experience for me. Haven't been on twice. I didn't know the first time. I was wet behind the ears, and then I came back and was able to win, which was crazy. By the way, that second time I was on, barbed wire, come on.
That's our next question.
Leads us right into this. What did you think when you saw the prickly bitch barbed wire?
I'll be honest with you. I wasn't pissed. I was intrigued, but I had no idea how I was going to do that. Absolutely no idea how I was going to turn barbed wire into a functional knife. It's crazy. It's not hardenable. You know, now they did give us some 1084, I think, a bar of that. But we had to show the pattern of the barbed wire on the side. So you had to see that it was barbed wire. It wasn't just, oh, give us a knife with a pattern. They had to see that it was barbed wire. So that's an intricacy that's part of that challenge that is quite difficult to go, okay, well, you got to recognize that out of it as well. So, that had us all scratching our heads. And we all took the 4 fairly different approaches. 3 of us were kind of similar on our techniques with sandwiching, keeping that in the side. Chad, who went out first, he had the best construction of a knife of the group of us. It's unfortunate he can't read a ruler, but hey, he's a farrier.
Oh, man.
Shots fired.
Yeah.
And calling in, we have him.
That would be perfect. It's all right. I do harass him a lot. He works in Mackinac Island in Michigan, and I was up there at the beginning of the summer, and every time I make sure to bring that up. I go, hey, Chad, let me check your rulers and make sure you don't have the extra space on the end.
Well, he failed on the overall length, right? Or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, we had to mark either the end of our blade or plunge line to tip.
Okay.
And his was an eighth of an inch off is what his ended up being, because the ruler he was using had that, it didn't start at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, it had the gap.
It's the dash line. But, you know.
Wow.
That'll get you.
Yeah. So when you found out, like, you'd gotten voted on to get on this fans' favorite show to come back on, did you not know who the other guys were going to be until you showed up? Like
no idea. I got picked up in the airport. I think I was the first one picked up at the airport, so I'm in the back of the van just riding around, and then we picked up Chad. Did we pick up Chad last? I don't know who we picked up. Robbie came in. Robbie Bowman. Honestly, here's weird. I've really come to like Robbie Bowman. I'm actually working with him this summer. I'm at his shop.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, he got in the van and he went woo and made his whatever, and I went, holy fucking God. You know, is this what I got to deal with all weekend? Is somebody going woo every time they talk?
Smoky Mountain Blacksmith.
Yeah. But he toned it, he did his thing, and then he toned it down, and it was just Robbie. And Robbie's a great guy. I really like him, and I love what he has going on in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. I love teaching people, and I've been there doing giving lessons all summer. We're actually looking at opening a shop up together in Charleston, South Carolina, where anybody can come in and forge a knife. It's that, like, get in, hammer something out, a railroad spike, a horseshoe, a pony shoe, or a nail. I mean, I've done lessons for 2-year-olds in the last month.
Really?
Yeah, which is, and I think that's cool, because I want people out there making stuff. I want America to make and build skill set. One of the things I think when you look at the modern landscape of people, you see a lot of depression, lack of self-discipline, lack of a lot of things. A lot of things are missing because people, I don't think, are doing anything anymore. they're interacting with screens and this and that and whatever. And I don't want to belittle all that. I think that's good. I work on technology. I'm a web designer. So, I can't slap one side of my face and not hit the other somehow in that. But make stuff, get out there and make stuff. The first time you ever make something and you look at it, you go, wow, I did that. It doesn't matter if it's any good or not. It could be absolute garbage, but you just made it,
Yeah.
You put in the effort to do something. You learn something that adds something to you that wasn't there before, that is special. It's unique. And then when you evaluate that and you go back and you make it again and you do it even better, you have that, wow, I did this and I did it even better. And this is cool. And you continue to do that. I love, if you look at Robert Burns, and he was on Forged in Fire as well. I think season 1 maybe, possibly also season 2 with me. He has a Facebook album on his group of his very first knife. And it's almost every single knife he's ever made. And the first ones are just absolute gnarly garbage. That's where we all start. We all start at gnarly garbage. And then we make slightly better gnarly garbage. And then you look a few years down the road and you see this progression and you go, wow. Because I look at Robert Burns and I think amazing maker. I never think about that gnarly garbage because it was a while ago, But you have to get through that. You go through that and you make that, and then you can make awesome things. And how good do you feel about yourself when you've accomplished something? We want to solve some of those depression, anxiety issues in this country. Make something. You're wearing that shirt right now. Be a maker, not a taker. You both are. I mean, it's a great movement. Absolutely. Be a maker. Be a maker. And I don't even say it from the be a maker, not a taker part of it. I think be a maker to better yourself. Be a maker to better all of us together. Be a maker. Yeah. Jason Knight does it right. It's a fantastic saying. I want more people to make stuff. I don't care if it's knives. I don't care if it's blacksmithing. Just make something.
Yeah.
And so were you excited to be on this Fans Favorite episode with all these other guys?
Oh, did I? I didn't even answer that question, did I? I'm so sorry. Yes, I was. I was pretty stoked about it. It was cool when I saw the van pile up with people. It was cool to be in with those personalities because I feel like my season 2 appearance was pretty. I don't know. I wore a black t-shirt and jeans. I fade into the background. I felt like it. I was the underdog in that season 4 episode.
So, with this episode, was your aunt able to show this to her church group? Yeah, I mean, you had some swears in there.
But they bleeped them out, so still no?
Yeah, I mean...
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, probably not. Probably not. Maybe. She's really conservative, my Annie. She's really conservative. But she's a good sport. I've done a couple live videos with her since then, and she plays it off well.
You can just have her mute it. Just mute the episode.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Just watch what he's doing. That's it.
Yeah. I'll just do this. Nobody will know. If they can't see my mouth, they can't tell that I'm saying, well, there's people in the shop.
So, when you were making your blade in that one and you quenched, you had a pretty bad warp, and you were saying you were watching it slowly warp in front of you. Did you do anything, beyond what they showed to kind of fix the warp? Because they showed it kind of tighten down the vise with some wood, and then you ended up going back in to reheat and quench. Was there any other stuff that you were doing at that point to fix it?
Yes. I yelled and screamed at that thing so much. You have no idea. And at one point, I'm on the floor at one point with a hammer, just squeezing down on that thing, just saying, "You will do as you're told." I felt like I was my mom when I was a kid getting spanked or in trouble. Each hit of the spanking is a different word. You will be. And that just kind of came out, and it didn't even work. table. And the very last thing that I did, which is so bizarre, I just went over to the water tank, and it was curved like this. And I drizzled the water on this side, and I watched it go.
Wow.
Really?
It was a last-ditch effort, and I'm telling you, it was within 6 minutes of the timer going off.
Oh, wow.
It was less than 6. Yeah, it was within 6 minutes, because once it straightened out, I ran over to the grinder, did another cleanup, stuck it in acid, went to the table. 6 minutes. I still had a potato chip at 6 minutes.
Oh my God.
I put a little water on that thing, and it just went boom, right to straight.
Oh, that's awesome.
Stroke of last minute thought. I mean, I was pulling tricks out of my sleeves all over, and none of them were working, and the water thing just hit. I got lucky.
How cool is Ray Kirk?
Ray Kirk is pretty cool. He is a treasure trove of information as well. So I sat and I picked his brain nonstop, because we sit in a green room for hours. All day long, you're sitting in a room with these people. And that's why you see the friendships develop over the time of the episode. And by the end, they look like they've been best friends forever. Well, we've just spent a shitload of time together in a room with nothing else. So all you have is to talk and communicate. And it was cool. I mean, we weren't given any paper or anything, but I did steal a marker and a pen, and we were ripping the boxes of snack foods that they had us in one room. We were ripping the boxes off and drawing out ideas and knives and just talking through tricks and stuff like that. And it was very cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you think you were going to move on to the third round?
I felt like I had a really good chance of moving on to yeah. I did. I know. So I know when I review the footage, I think about it, my blade probably cut the least deep into the Kevlar again, which was disappointing. But there are a couple things that I did that nobody else did on that set. I thermal cycled the fuck out of that blade. Even when I redid it, after it warped the first time, I put it in, I annealed it, put it in, let it sit. I mean, I spent an hour in front of that box, okay? It was so bad that my lips were sunburned when I left, and the week that I was doing my home forge, when I came back, I let my mustache continue to grow over because I had heat bubbles all across my lip from the burn on my face. My cheeks were all burned out, my forehead, everything was burned from the amount of time I spent watching my blade, keeping the temperatures right for an hour straight, or 54 minutes straight is what it ended up being. So you definitely can have, there's physical repercussions in this job. It is dangerous. There are hazards in it. So shit, I lost track. What was I at? What question was I answering?
About going to the third round after the testing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So when we got to testing, so I made sure my blade was solid. It was a little bit thick on the cutting edge, but you know, I'd been on Forged and Fire before. I knew that they were going to try to damage it. We were told that we had to cut through barbed wire.
Right. You're not going to have a razor thin edge to try to cut through barbed wire.
You can't have it razor thin and do that. And I know that you're more likely to get kicked off for damage than you are for not cutting as deeply. So I just made sure it was sharp. I had Ray Kirk test it, and he checked it, and it was good. So I felt really good going into it. And the test, it didn't cut as hard, but if you notice, if you rewatch that bag cut, you will notice that one of the requirements was a stab.
Yes.
And I can't remember whose goes first, but Robbie's, if his knife is my whole hand here,
yep,
his knife cuts in about that far on the stab, and Ray's goes about that far, but mine goes about that far.
Oh, okay.
And that's, in the interviews, what I was telling to the producers is I go, you can't underestimate that stab cut, because look, Kevlar is made to be sort of cut resistant anyhow. Mm-hmm. If you want to get through Kevlar, if you want to kill something, you got to stab that. And I go, mine rocked it the best if you look at it from that angle.
Yeah.
I think part of that is just coming in with the right angle and pitching, because they go through all these little interviews, right? and they ask you about what you think about your blade and the others and the performances and stuff like that. Well, if you're going to go in there and talk shit about your own blade, you aren't going to the next round.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't have the confidence in your performance, why should they? And the first time I was on, I made that mistake, and I critically evaluated my blade, and I didn't win, you know? Mm-hmm. This time I went, no, I'm not going to do that. No. And I did perform well, you know? I cut the Kevlar. That was a requirement. I stabbed deeper, and I took 0 damage on the barbed wire. Right. That's because I treated it right. I took the time to do it.
If someone's trying to shoot someone that's wearing a Kevlar vest, you don't shoot and to graze them.
Right.
You shoot head on.
Yeah. You don't stab someone to like lightly cut or slash them. Oh, I just want to slash through your Kevlar. No, I want to stab through that shit and get into some guts.
Oh, of course. So this was an episode that had Jason Knight on as one of the judges. And you've already had some nice things to say about Jason, but at the time, when you see him as a judge, does he come off as more intimidating in person? 'Cause we've talked to him too. Like we've had a nice long conversation with him, and he was very, very cool to talk to, very personable. But the show really makes him look intimidating. And so, in person, how does it feel to go and stand in front of Jason? I mean, alongside David and Doug, for that matter, and Will Willis, of course, is immensely intimidating.
Yeah. Jason, so I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and that is where I primarily learned to bladesmith. Jason Knight lived 35, 40 minutes up the street from me. He's a legend in Charleston, South Carolina. So not only was it intimidating for me, but I'm a guy that's learned from his area of the country that I'm going to represent now. I had to be on point, you know? So I actually felt a lot of additional pressure standing in front of Jason Knight than maybe a lot of other people didn't feel, even though they probably felt immense, because he's an amazing maker. You know, it's when I was talking earlier about people who are out there making amazing things, Jason Knight is one of those names. I mean, it is hard to touch or reach that level. He's brilliant. He's great, comes up with cool stuff, and he cares about makers, you know. He invests in people. He does give back, you know. He's not one of those guys that says something and doesn't live it. He lives what he says. And he's an immensely respectable man. And standing in front of him, all I felt was, man, I can't fuck up.
Yeah.
I can't fuck up. You know, and it's hard on that because you don't know what's getting thrown at you. You don't know what's going to happen. So when you present those blades and you go in front of that board, you're just like, the judgment is real. I mean, it's facing that judgment table. It's all out of your hands. It's all entirely in their hands. And have you impress them? Does your weapon meet the expectations? And going in front of somebody like Jason Knight is very intimidating.
So we were watching this episode tonight, actually in preparation for this interview, and we happen to have our kids on the couch. We've got a 3-year-old and one who's almost 6. So there's a commercial break. We turn to our older daughter, and we're like, okay, who do you want to win? Oh no, she offered it.
She offered it without saying anything. It was down to you and Ray, and she was watching the last 5 days where you're making the blades, and she comes out
and she busts out. And she's like, "I want Josh to win." Okay, why? I think the blade is sharp enough to cut everything. So we had the rooting on of our 6-year-old.
That Penobis was amazing. And I don't know if you noticed in the new episodes, it's right behind Will in the Connecticut. In the back shot, when he's standing there at the end of the table, it's on the back wall.
Oh, no.
Oh, we'll have to check that out.
You can see it in almost every episode now.
I think I've noticed that, because I do notice some other weapons. I think I remember seeing that now. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It was a cool weapon. Jason Knight told me later he actually came. So we filmed, I don't know when we filmed sometime, and then it aired in the spring, early May, and my birthday's in June, and he was home by then. So he just showed up at my house on my birthday at like 8 o'clock in the morning. Let's go downtown. We're gonna have a good time. So we went downtown. We just popped from place to place and drank around town most of the day. And yeah, it was really cool. It was a really good surprise.
That's an awesome birthday gift.
Yeah.
One of the things he told me, he goes, I've held a real Penobus before, several of them, and he owned one at one point, and he goes, yours was as real of a Penobus as they come. He goes, that was perfect. The edge was great. The design, the structure, the curve. He goes, everything about it was on point. So it was a really cool compliment for me. But even before I knew that, when I was done forging it, actually I was done forging it and I put the handle on and it was a globby mess. Okay. I really made a mistake with the handle in that I made a 3-piece construction and mortised them together. But I had put 2 pieces together first on a day that wasn't as hot. The next day it was a lot hotter. So when I put my epoxy on, it cured twice as fast as the previous day, and it was really thick and globby and everywhere. And I was just pulling my hair out, just really frustrated. And I'm looking at it going, I'm going to have to rip this whole thing off. But it took me 2.5 days to make those 3 planks because I'm not set up as a wood shop.
Right.
A metal shop. I didn't have a bandsaw that could actually just rip down and cut out the 2 pieces that I needed, 2 or 3 pieces. So I actually had to cut really awkward chunks and then hand sand them, or I used a grinder to grind them down and then hand sanded them flat. It took me a long time. And I'm going, I don't know how I'm going to do that in 15 hours. It's just not possible. So with long pins sticking out the side and epoxy everywhere, I went, I'm going to go take this out back. I'll put a quick edge on it. I'm going to beat the hell out of it. If it has any problems, I'll rip it off. If it doesn't, I'm leaving it.
How was the switch?
I took it out back, and I was cutting trees that thick with just one easy, like you barely even felt it. It was
Easy transition.
just so amazing how well that thing worked and how well it cut through and how well balanced it was. And that's a huge difference between mine and Ray's, and I've held his since then because he got his back. But we also traded on set. I wanted to feel his. The balance on mine was a lot better. I actually forged out a 3/8 inch tang, but it went 9 inches into my piece. So his was only about 4.5, maybe 5 inches long.
Okay.
So his was really very blade heavy and very thick. Mine was a full flat grind. So that takes a lot of the weight off. I also had, there's that little spine that goes up the back of that little fin.
Right.
From that to the very end, there was distal taper all the way on the backside as well. So it was actually quite light and fast in comparison to his in the mobility aspect. And then the way that I had designed that arc, even though Doug was a little worried it was too much of a curve,
Mm-hmm.
what I did with that is I planned where the point of that goes in relation to the handle of where your hands go. So that, I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but if I can't do it with my hand. Oh, okay. All right. No. I can't do it. I can't do it.
We can visualize. Continue.
So if you're looking down the blade that way, it's got that curved tip
Right.
like that. The
Right.
very point of it comes back here, even though there's a space here. It lines up with where your hands go, so you can control the point of that blade, even though it curved back quite dramatically,
Right.
which is pretty cool functionality when you need to aim and hit something accurately. So, yeah.
So I feel like the show itself, they didn't really mention a whole lot about the balance of the sword and stuff. So
Yeah.
they almost made it seem like because yours was more aesthetically pleasing because you had a couple little bit of extra, your handle had the octagonal design,
Yeah.
and you had the extra grinds in the top part. that they kind of made it seem like that was the reason you won. But I feel like there was probably more to it, especially now that you're explaining how the balance worked on it. That went into that decision on the judge's part.
Yeah, and there were a couple, and they go into a lot more when you're on set. They just didn't air it all. One of the other major differences is Ray's blade actually is a little bit more designed like a Chinese weapon and not a Filipino weapon. So it wasn't really as historically accurate to a Penobus, and they had asked for a Penobus. Penobuses have an octagonal or at least a hexagonal shape to those handle ends.
Oh, okay.
So there were some points that, even though they weren't written out requirements, that are differences in the blade that came out. But also, the balance is a big thing. And a lot of people forget that Ray's took damage. His edge, and I've felt it since then, and it's stayed the same. He hasn't changed the edge. I was able to feel the damage afterwards. And it's actually, it's not major damage, but it's feelable and seeable. I mean, I could see it after they were done smashing those helmets and they tilted my blade. I didn't see a weird flash or disrupted thing. When they flipped his and I saw it in the light, I saw the jagged parts from every time that they hit that helmet. And the difference is we went with completely different blade steels and different quench approaches. I used the W1 that they provided, which is better for over a long distance sword type blade. He used 52-100, which is a great steel, but it is not a great sword steel. It is more brittle over a long length like that than the type of steel that I use. He torch quenches. He just heats up the edge and then quenches. While it leaves somewhat flexible blade, you didn't need that in a Penobus. You need a fully hardened blade in a Penobus so that you get the strength behind it so it doesn't have a crumply edge. I thermal cycled my blades in an annealed state, and then 3 thermal cycles, starting just over critical, then at critical, and then under critical, and then back up to critical for the quench, and then a full quench. And I used a clay back on my last one. I clayed up the spine. So I was able to get a differential heat treat with a full quench still, which makes a much more solid piece than what Ray did. And that's why he got edge damage. And that's a really significant difference, because really the life and the strength and that of a blade, it's all in the quench. I mean, how many times have you heard Jay Nielsen say that? It's not a lie. It's true. The quench makes everything. So it makes a lot more difference than people think. That little edge damage that they saw in that was a bigger factor than whatever. The cut test also throws a lot of people off because they were not intending to cut the pigs in half on that episode. So Doug said that they were taking multiple strikes because they wanted to get more than one cut into them to see how the blade holds up against the animal. When he went through on mine, it surprised him. They weren't expecting it to cut through the whole way. And they watched that film in slow motion, and he said the only thing that there was one flap of skin hanging before he came back in again and cut it. And I think had he just left it, it would have probably... Yeah, but he came right back in. But he was not intending to cut the pig in one stroke. After he used mine, he knew he had to kind of just make up for it and do that with Ray. So he went through with one, and he was better set up because he had the practice with my weapon. See how I went through the pig. So they take that stuff into consideration as well in the background in the decision. So those were some things that were told to me.
So we were outside.
Okay. Which I think is cool. It's good background information. All of that stuff I think is good for people out there to know and understand and become more intimate and familiar with what happens on that show and in the set. But the tests are real. They're good. If they mess them up, they don't air them. The first time I was on, Doug messed up one of the skin tests that nobody will ever see from the Kukri episode, which was a pretty big determining factor as to why my blade did not make it. And that one, it didn't air, and it won't ever air. And I think that that's fine. I'm okay with it. Look, I lost in that. I took a real bad business hit immediately afterwards, which did suck, but I've overcome it. You know, if you're resilient and you have thick skin and you get back out there, you will be fine. You know, just go make more cool shit.
Yeah.
Videos, you know.
So moving away from kind of the episodes, just kind of more generic background stuff. How did you get into bladesmithing?
I was 12 years old. 12 years old, hammering down nails in my driveway. And I just wanted to make knives. I just thought knives were cool and metalwork was cool. And that's just what I wanted to do. And then my uncle saw me doing that. He goes, your great grandfather was and I hear that all the time. My grandfather. Well, of course your grandfather was. They didn't even have hardware stores back then. I mean, they did, but you had to have a blacksmith around if there was a farm or anything. You had to have some sort of skill on that. So everybody was a blacksmith 100 years ago. Yeah. And then I worked at a horse ranch for 6 years. And made knives on the weekends and stuff like that whenever I had spare time. That was a lot of fun. Went off, got involved in a career. I'm a web designer and a UX designer, so desk job. I don't love being in a desk job, which is why I now am pretty much a full-time maker at this point.
I do.
Awesome.
Oh, great.
Do you have anything?
Do you have a material and style that you like to work with when blade making?
Absolutely. I like the migration era, Vendel period, and Viking Age. My absolute favorite thing, I really enjoy making a multi-bar sacks, and not the shitty ones that just have a 45-degree clip. I'm talking the real designed saxes. Second, the axes. I love bearded axes. They're fucking awesome. I mean, they almost beat everything. I just love a really good bearded axe. There's just something about it. And then swords. I got into knife making to make swords. I now make the smallest knives that you can possibly get on the market, little fucking knuckle knives. But they're cool, they're sharp and shit like that. But I love swords. I like that period swords. I like the Le 10 period swords, the like the Hallstatt D type. They're amazing, And my knife or death knife is actually based off of a Celtiberian knife from 400 BC that I saw in a museum in Germany. In let's see, what is the name of that place? I should know this because my daughter was definitely conceived in this town. And it was one of my favorite places. Come on, why is that slipping my head? Doesn't matter. At an awesome museum in Germany, this Celtiberian war knife, and I just had to make it. And when I got the call for Knife or Death, I went, I'm going to pull that out of obscurity, and I want to see how that goes against, because I had a feeling that people were going to bring Bowie knives and choppers and, Japanese katana type shit. No offense if you guys like that stuff, but it's not my look. I'm a European descent dude. I don't dress up as a samurai on the weekends and play kendo. It's just not me,
You actually just recently, I was watching your Instagram posts. It was for July 4th. You did the Eagle Talon knife.
Yeah.
That was I really loved the design, and I was wondering kind of, what did you come up with that idea, like that particular design, or was it based off of something else, or?
It really was just, I wanted to find something that was America themed. So I went Eagle. Yeah. I just wanted to do Eagle. And I thought, well, beak, talon, something like that. I got to find something that works. And so I just tried to come up with something as talon-y as possible. And it's karambit sort of inspired in that type with the inner curve shaped knife, which is not really my style of knife to make, but it was cool. It was fun. And I love doing stuff like that. Those little challenges where, hey, let's make something weird right now. What's it going to be? I don't know. Let's give it a shot. Now, I still sketch stuff out, and I try to tell people to do that all the time. It doesn't matter if it's a spur-of-the-moment design or you're trying to let the metal talk to you. Give it a sketch, because as soon as you start putting a pencil to something or a piece of soapstone on your anvil or the floor, doesn't matter. You're instantly starting to do the problem solving, and you have to solve problems to get completed projects. So I'd like to tell people, if you're a maker out there, draw, plan, sketch. It doesn't have to be amazing. Just start somewhere and then go build from that. It'll help guide you. That's what it's there for. It's guidance. And after you're done, you can compare it and go, oh, here's where I went wrong, or this is what I could do different in this scenario, or I wasn't quite able to get that upsweep. How will I do that next time? It's learning for your next build. Document that if you can. I'm not that organized of a guy. I'm absolutely one of those creatives that has a very messy desk, a very messy workspace, but I do believe in drawing, sketching, and planning as much as possible when it comes to building things.
And that's one of the cool things I like to see on your Instagram too, is a lot of times you'll show one of your sketches as you're going, and you'll post a picture of that, and just seeing some of the background that goes behind it, because so much of a lot of different knife makers on Instagram are only showing the final
product.
Yeah. So you get to see more of what goes into making the blade, and it's beneficial for everybody, I think, and it makes it that much more interesting to me to see what the final product's going to look like when you forge everything out based on how you just sketched it out using a little piece of soapstone on an anvil.
I'm really happy to hear people say that. That's great. And I'm going to keep doing that, because that's exactly it. I talk to so many people who go, I really want to see more of the process. There's so many finished shots out there. So many finished shots. I want to see more process shots. I like to see it. And, a lot of people, and you're welcome to, anybody out there, this is just a broadcast statement. Feel free through Instagram to send me pictures of your work along the way and ask for pointers. I take time out of my day to try to respond to makers that are having, hey, this is what I'm trying to make. How do I do this? Hey, I'm trying to get started. What should I do? Hey, I'm having a problem getting my tips forged out the way I want to. I saw your video. Is there any more information you can give me? Yeah, I will. As soon as I get a time or a break, I respond to all of those, because I want you all to make better stuff, improve yourself. So feel free to send me messages. It doesn't have to be a private message. You can just tag me in a post and say, hey, what do you think? What should I do next? And I will try to respond to that. I'm not that famous yet where I can't, keep up with my Instagram still by myself.
So in that type of vein then, for someone that has never done anything like this. So Chris and we just did a blacksmith intro class on Monday.
Yes.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, yesterday.
So, and it was really cool. We made a couple of hooks. It was really really awesome. So, we've kind of tossed on the idea of making our own kind of backyard forge and doing something.
Yeah.
Do you have any good beginner's tips for people just trying to start out, just to do anything, not necessarily blades?
Yes, I do. The first thing I'm going to say is safety first. Do not forget safety. There have been so many shop and house fires out there. Okay? Take a moment, look at the space that you're going to work in, if it's a garage, if it's a backyard, if it's a shed. A lot of people put them in their garages and sheds. What else do they put in there? A lawnmower. What else goes next to a lawnmower? A can of gas.
Yeah.
What don't they remove before they start going? The lawnmower or the can of gas. What lights on fire first when you hot cut something and it shoots across the garage and lands on the can of gas? The can of gas.
Makes sense.
So you really need to, the first thing you need to do, don't worry about building your own forge and building your own this, building your own that. You need to worry about safety. It is much less expensive to buy a forge from a known maker or a known brand than it is to replace your house, your dog, or your entire shop, or your family. You can't replace your family. Just buy some fucking basic shit that's safe and proven. That's the best advice I could give to you right now, is go buy a decent forge that won't blow up on you, that has a regulator, that has a metal braided cord that goes back to your propane tank, that isn't housed inside your shop or shed. Okay? Start there. If you're going to do coal, don't have shit on the ground. Don't have wood around. Don't have burnable stuff. Don't have hay. Don't have pine straw. Make sure that your floor is cleared. It can be dirt. It can be cement. It can be sand. It can't be burnable stuff, you know. You would think that some of this is common sense, but the truth is a lot of people really just don't know anything about this. So you can't put everything and say, oh, well, just use your own common sense. Well, a lot of people's common sense says, I got a roof over my head in my garage. I'm just going to do it in there. And the next thing you know, they've watched Forged in Fire. They see us quench, and they see these big billowy clouds of fire and smoke. Almost none of my knives ever have that big blow up because it's not the proper way to quench a sword or a knife.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You should never have any of that. Most of the people who do that when they go on set, they're doing it so that they get the camera shot of that happening. That's it. They've realized that what's going on, and they get airtime when they create that big burst. The best way to know that your knife is fully down to the temperature is to leave it in the oil until it's dropped below the 200 degree mark. That's it. You know, so yeah, start safe. I mean, I just want to say that again. Start safe. You know, think things through, talk to people, have the fire volunteers, the firemen, fire company, fire department. Call the fire department and have a fire inspector come over. They will come over. Generally, it's for free because they don't want to come. I mean, just call them and say, hey, I'm going to start forging. This is what I'm going to do. Can you please come check out my statement, my setup? You know, get fire extinguishers. Don't ever be more than 6 feet away from a fire extinguisher in your shop. I have a 1-car garage that I work out of. I have 3 fire extinguishers in there. One at the back, one in the middle, one at the end. When I'm forging, you don't often see it in videos, right away from my propane tank where I can still get to it just in case a hose catches and whips around. I can still reach that without getting hit by a burning hose and spray down what I need to get to my piece. I also keep, I have different pieces of fire resistant material, and honestly, even a piece of plywood can work for a while. If your propane hose catches on fire and it's whipping around, and you go to try to turn your tank off, you're going to have to face that hose. Put a piece of plywood or something between you to protect your face or whatever so that you can block that off and go get to your nozzle to shut that off. Safety precautions first before you light anything. I have 5 kids. Does it show?
Got it.
Who was your favorite Forged in Fire cast member?
Are we talking judge type or contestant? Okay, judge. Ooh.
So you can answer both.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I will answer both. I will try to do that. Okay. It's going to be an ambiguous answer. I've gotten to know Jay Nielsen quite a bit, and I have a lot of respect for him. Maybe a lot of people don't realize that one of the reasons he doesn't film all the time is because when he has his children, he spends his time with his children. And I've gone through a custody battle myself, and so I understand that when I have my kids, I want to be with my kids. And when I learned that about him and what he's kind of given up as far as fame and whatever with the show to be with his kids, that makes my respect level for him just jump through the roof. Anybody who puts their family first, I just have a lot of respect for. If I go from a skill and talent level, I mean, Jason Knight is really hard to beat from that. If you want to talk style, Dave Baker has fashion style down. You know? Using a weapon, Doug Markite is about the nicest guy you could probably ever meet. He's just nice, warm, welcoming, and friendly, and I absolutely love that about him. A little bit goofy, which is great. It's really nice to have that on set. Ben Abbott, who's recently been added to the cast, I think is also fantastic. Ben Abbott is a wonderful person, wonderful smith. Really like any time I get to interact with him. Last time was at Blade Show. Just a great guy, great smith. I'm really happy for the success of him that he was able to come on to the show. And then, of course, I can't leave out Will Willis. You know, Will is great. He really does a good job at making the smiths feel comfortable, and he walks around and interacts and helps try to sell nerves and helps to set them up to get the best out of us. And that really does make for a great host. The behind-the-scenes stuff that you don't see Will doing is what makes Will an amazing host. So thank you, Will, for being an amazing host and continuing on. And dude, you're fucking great. Personal.
I don't know if we can ever ask another contestant that question again, because I don't know if they're gonna be able to really hold a candle to what you just said. But that was great.
Thank you. Yeah, I think about them a lot. They're great. Great people. It's a really great cast. Really nice to see this show have success, and a large part of that is that group of people.
Right.
So, yeah. Smiths. Who's my favorite of the Smiths? Some of the guys I like, I gotta just Salem Straub. His work is amazing. Mareko Maumasi, amazing. Jamie Lundell, amazing. Okay, those are probably my top 3 favorites right there, as far as the work that they produce.
Okay, cool. And actually, Mareko, he's based at the Dragon's Breath Forge, which is less than a 10-minute drive from where we live.
Yeah.
And I actually grew up in that town, and we are very keen and interested in getting in there soon and talking with those guys, which may be happening. We got to work out some details and stuff still, but that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. You know what you guys should do is you should come to the grudge match September 21st through 23rd in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, because we will have 25 Forge and Fire alumni right here in the parking lot where I'm sitting from.
Oh, sick.
And run live shows all fucking weekend.
All right. Well, we have to talk to our respective jobs and see what we can do for getting some time for that. But that I think we might be able to see if we can work something out.
I'm the least likely to be able to go anywhere, but that's okay, boys.
We'll figure something out, because that does sound fun. And actually, I had heard about that because Alex Ruiz had posted about it, because he's going to be taking part in that as well. And I was like, oh, interesting. Yeah. So
it's the largest gathering of Forged and Fire alumni outside of Blade Show, and actually it will quite possibly surpass that very soon. We have 25 committed to this year. We've got some pretty cool sponsors coming. I'm really excited. I've been working with Kiln Frog. And also, I have one of their products, GenKen, and it's a vertical air bath. And I will be doing, upcoming through this fall and winter, hosting some quench parties, so that blade makers from, I don't care where you come from, you can come to my shop and you can use my vertical air bath to quench your blades, and we'll do some videos and stuff of that. But this piece of equipment is awesome. It's amazing. Sorry, I'm throwing in a shameless plug here for
that
somebody else.
That sounds pretty interesting, though.
So
relevant.
I'm not. So yeah, what is it? Like, what exactly is it?
So the GenKen kiln they used to make a lot of stuff for pottery, ceramics, glass, etc. They're getting into blade making, and they've recently come out with this vertical air bath, sort of an octagonal type kiln, and they have it in 3 dimensions, I think 18, 24, and 30 inch. So, and they may be able to do custom if you needed a larger one, which is very cool to have a company that would be willing to do that. But most kilns, you have to slide stuff in horizontally, So for me doing that penalties, I've been making recreations and doing them in another kiln that I have. But the space is so weird that I actually have to lay it sideways, do a heat there, then lay it sideways again. But I've still been getting a lot of warpage because it doesn't fit quite right, and it's resting weirdly on the insides of the kiln. With the vertical air bath, I can actually hang it straight up and down inside this kiln, so there's no weird weight at all. And the heat units are perfectly even all the way around. So you get a really fantastic, smooth, perfect heat. And you just open the lid, pull that off, drop it right into your quench tank, and you are done. And you will reduce your warpage dramatically in this system. If you use the right quenchant and you use the right temper, you're just going to be unstoppable.
That sounds pretty awesome, actually. Yeah.
You should shoot an infomercial for them.
I should shoot an infomercial. I may actually do that. But they are one of the sponsors of the Grudge match. So I'm really excited. They actually just sent me a kiln to play with, and I will be plugging that up this week and posting some videos. You'll see some Instagram stuff of me with that. I've got some blades ready to go. I just got to change one outlet in the shop, and I'll be ready.
There you go.
I'm bad with electricity, I'll be honest.
Safety first.
Yeah, safety first, right? Rubber gloves. Safety first means calling an electrician, getting somebody who knows what they're talking about. It's not my shop, so I don't,
Oh, well. Yeah.
Yeah. I got it. So, yeah. Grudge match, be there. It'll be awesome.
All right. So, let me wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Okay. So, is there one question we should have asked that we didn't?
It's a trick question.
Of anything.
No,
Of
if
anything
there's
in
something you're
general.
hoping to talk about.
Is
We
there
just-
Anything
something-
that you want to say.
I don't know. You guys covered some pretty good ground. I'm pretty happy about it. Did I talk about my wrist cuffs yet?
So that we'll go into this as we go. So do you do a lot of Instagram is great, obviously, for posting your work and stuff. Do you get a lot of customers through Instagram? Is that like one of your main sources, or do you do website or Facebook, or is there a preference? Like if somebody wants to contact you to get something made, what's the best way to contact you?
Instagram's pretty good. I also have an Etsy store, but I am moving away from the custom order market. Right now, I am focusing on making a handful of products well and producing them in small batches. And then when I make a cool piece, so I'll let people contact me. Oh, hey, I want this. Hey, I want that. Hey, I want that. I actually keep a marker board in my office of requests that I like. And then if I feel like making an axe or a whatever type knife that is, I'll look up that person and go, hey, I've made it. If you want to buy it, I'm almost done. Here's a picture. But I find that to make a living, I can't chase the custom orders because they just take so much time. You know, you can spend 40 hours on the phone with somebody talking about their $600 knife, and now you make $0 from it.
Right.
So I've had to stop taking custom orders, and I just go, hey, the Celtiberian War Knife, I have a whole bunch of people that want that from Knife or Death. I'm going to release 5 of them or 10 of them this fall. These are going to be the prices on them. Y'all can buy them when they're ready. Done. You know, I'm putting out the wrist cuffs in different batches, and it's just the way that I have to do it to stay productive and make money. The other thing I'm doing, which is kind of more important than that, is I've got a couple pieces of equipment that I am designing. One of them is a forge. We talked about buying something from somebody who knows what they're doing. Right now I'm working with a ex-Navy CB engineer that used to build compression tanks, but we are working together on a forge design. I've got a couple prototypes out there, working on some tweaks, hoping to have, basically I'll be releasing a couple products at the grudge match. The other one is a super secret product that I don't really want to talk about and give the idea away at this point because I don't want anybody else to get on it, but it's a game changer in the heat treating process. It's not a kiln, it's not an oven, but I'm hoping that this particular product will save a lot of future shops. I see people going through the heat treat process and a lot of really unsafe practices with a lot of homemade jankety equipment. I have talked about on my YouTube channel and elsewhere that I'm making a commitment to beginning makers out there that whatever I'm developing, I will have a decent entry-level price point available so that even if you can only afford like $300, you'll be able to get a decent piece of safe equipment for your shop. Now, I will have also very high-end versions of these things with all the bells and whistles, but there will be a starter baseline safe shit for people to not burn their house and their life down. I'm just seeing too much of that going on, and I can't stand by anymore and watch that happen while people try to do things that I've done on TV. I feel I'm not responsible for people's actions, but people are looking at us. Right. All of us guys and women that have been on Forged in Fire, people watch us on that show. So if we do something unsafe on the show, they don't necessarily know that it's unsafe. It's not called out. So they might do that in their shop. And I just want to make sure that people are being safe. I have stressed that enough, haven't I?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that either.
No, it's not uncool to be safe. I'll tell you what, it really isn't. I used to run around as sort of like a wild... Well, I've been in so many accidents and so many mistakes and have had so much damage done to my body. I'm 37 years old. I am fucked, okay? Because I have not been safe. I have a terrible back. I have a fucked neck. I have probably 35% of my body is scar tissue. It's not been worth it. I'm 37 and I feel like I'm 65, okay? There's no reason for people to feel like that. Just implement a couple safety measures. That's it. Wear some leather gloves occasionally. Don't skateboard naked down a hill. Drown without shoes. Yeah. That hurts so bad.
Sounds awful.
Oh.
Well, on that note,
yeah, I think that's the perfect end to the episode.
Yeah.
So
stay safe out there, kids.
Yeah. Don't skateboard naked down a hill.
Yeah.
The more you know.
Well, Josh, thank you very much for coming on the show with us. We had a great time talking with you. It's always funny how fast these things go by, and then you look back and it's like, wow, that was an hour and a half. That just flew by. We got so much great information from you, and we will very highly put a lot of thought into going down to that grudge match. We will look into it a little more. I would love to do it, so we'll figure something out. Hopefully, maybe at least one of us will be there, but
that'd be cool.
The goal would be to get all of us there. So we'll see how that works out. So, what is your Instagram handle? We'll put out a couple social media stuff for people to follow you if they're not already.
Yeah, Josh A.Weston.
Josh A.Weston. There you go.
Yep, it's easy.
Josh A. Weston.
Josh A.
Weston.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
On
It's safe.
Instagram. Remember to follow him. And hey, subscribe to our videos and like our videos and check out our Facebook and our Instagram. And we have a Twitter, but nobody follows us there. So don't fucking bother with that one.
Do people really use Twitter anymore?
Apparently, but not
Not us.
not in the bladesmithing community, except for like 2 or 3 guys that retweet our links. And I guess thanks for watching, everybody, and we will have some more content for you soon. Bye bye.
Awesome.
Well, we just
Ask
had
me all the dirty, dark secrets about Dave Baker.
And his pocket tape measure.
Yeah! He's got one in every single pocket, I swear to God.